Welcome, dudes and dudettes, to another episode of Just a Dude Podcast. I'm your host, Nathan, and today we're diving into the world of acting, directing, and kicking ass. We've got a guest whose journey from the quiet streets of Virginia to the bustling sets of Hollywood is nothing short of inspiring. He's not just an actor, he's a director, a producer, and a fourth-degree black belt in karate. So buckle up, because we're about to explore the life and career of a man who truly embodies the spirit of just a dude. Let's roll that tape. All right, folks, it's time to introduce our guest of honor today. He's a versatile talent known for his role in the critically acclaimed Somewhere in Montana, where he shared the screen with none other than Graham McTavish. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. He's graced our screens in WWJD, What Would Jesus Do? The Journey Continues, and Prophets of Science Fiction. And he's not stopping there. He's also the driving force behind Dragon Hunter Productions, aiming to bring his vision to life with a feature film set in his home state. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the actor, director, producer, and martial artist, Matt Drago. Matt, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Nathan, for having me. I'm just a dude like you, so this is going to be a great conversation. This is going to be awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, I figured it was great to have someone like yourself who's, acted in a big movie and have your own production company and just show how a normal, everyday guy or girl, depending on who you are, can go from just being an everyday dude to having the career of their dreams. So yeah, great to have you on the show. Do you want to let the audience know a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your background?
100%. I grew up in rural Virginia area, off the Interstate 66 as you're getting to the Appalachian Shenandoah Valley National Park there. And, just really humble beginnings. I grew up doing theater, just finding ways to be creative in any way that I could. And it just kind of gave me the opportunity to meet people and, just find people that I aligned with. And the journey continued. I got my first paying gig actually in dinner theater, which
Nice.
I always say is a very humble practice. And I think it really taught me early on because you have to I was 14, 15 years old. It's like you're on stage and then you're off stage serving tables, refilling drinks and clearing plates. Right. So I think it kind of taught me from an early point of view that I'm going to have to work for this and I love working for it. And so, that's something that perpetuated me to my next step, which was moving back to New York City. And I say back to New York City because both of my parents actually were originally from New York City, had a lot of extended family there, spent a lot of Christmases and holidays, Thanksgiving and Christmas with grandma on 79th and Broadway. So I moved back with my grandma to 79th and Broadway. My aunt had moved out at the time. My grandma was going to be alone. So it was just this perfect timing of me saying, well, hey, I really would love to move to New York and, just kind of continue my journey up there. And obviously grandma welcomed me with open arms. And it was just a really special time in my life that I always reflect on. And just took it all in, auditioned wherever and whenever I could, took in as many Broadway shows as I could. Again, it's always about learning, right? And so I felt like exactly. So it was just, I was around so many people that had been doing it a lot longer than I had. And it was just an amazing time in my life that I reflect on very fondly all the time. And just actually met a girl in an acting class and found out that I grew up literally 3 blocks away from each other in the same little town that we were both from in Front Royal, Virginia. And, we met in this acting class and we just, my girlfriend then, now my wife, we traveled across the country and it's just, it's been a journey that's kind of made sense. And even if it's been hard, I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful for, like you say, the bumps and bruises that you get along the way because it makes the wins all the more special.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, thinking about, going back to where you moved from Virginia back to New York with your grandmother, not only did that help you, but I have to imagine your grandmother, for most times, probably enjoyed having you around the house too, right?
100%. No, it was great. We'd go out to Broadway shows. We got a membership to the local opera. We'd have our dinners together. And just it's very special to be in a big city, but know that you're going to come home every night.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
To a family, right? To an actual family member instead of being by
someone
yourself.
That loves you. Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's, you don't realize how much that makes a difference too, because you have a built-in support group then, especially as you're looking, to get into acting and to get that break-in role or breakthrough role. being able to live with your family and still be in the right spot. Because I have to imagine New York City was a great spot to be to get into the acting phase of your life.
Yeah, a lot of journeyman actors and that are in New York City and really just honing in on the craft. I mean, I learned from so many different people. I mean, I think at one point, Nathan, I had like 4 different coaches that I was working with because I just wanted to take it all in. And so all the money that I'd make, busting my butt at the bar, till like 4 a.m., probably was just putting it right back into an audition coach. I studied with the great Michael Levine, who, was just somebody that really crafted your audition specific to what he felt like you brought to the character, and just had a lot of insight. Ron Shetler, who owned Shetler Studios, who was just kind of like a voice guru. Like he knew exactly how to, get you to find different ways of manipulating your voice, because you have to remember in Broadway for singing, there's so many different types of Broadway singing, whether it's more legit Broadway, whether it's more pop, whether it's more charactery, whether it's more like rock, like Rent, right? So it was like finding those different things. So I learned a lot from him. And then, in college, I went to Marymount Manhattan College. I studied with Kevin Connell, who was just a real lover and nurturer of actors. Ellen Orenstein there, Pat Simon, John Zendarzik. These are all people that really shaped my journey, that like really, really just kind of gave me a safe space to learn how to create my art, right? And then I went outside of college too. I studied for 2.5 years with the great Terry Schreiber, who actually got Edward Norton his start and has his own studio in Chelsea. And it just became another safe haven for me to develop my craft. And ironically enough, that's where I met Laura, my girlfriend, then now my wife. It's just like, things kind of align when you're looking for a direction in life. And I feel like the artist journey is always trying to be open to where you're going to find the different resets in your life that make that path a little bit clearer.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because I think of a line that we hear quite a bit where, when it rains, it pours. And we generally take that in a bad way. But I've had a few times in my life where that, that pouring rain coming down was actually good stuff. And it seems like that will happen to us sometimes, not all the time, but when we're actually working and putting in a lot of effort to reach our goals. And so that seems like what's happened to you now, because you've got a breakthrough role now in somewhere in Montana. You met your wife. You had a lot of great acting coaches. So it's like you just, it's almost like you took the bull by the horns and you were just like, I'm going to make this work no matter what.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's exactly right. And you kind of have to do that in life, right? Because if you're not open to the work that it's going to take to achieve something in life, you're probably, not going to achieve it, right? Because I mean, like everything that you do in life, and I really do, I try to deconstruct the myth of like acting or being in, what we'll say like a more forward facing profession where people see, the press, the events. And listen, who doesn't want to get dolled up and take your wife to a fun event, right? Like, of course. But so much of what we do as actors and creatives, whether you're a director, a producer, a writer, is so much into the love of the game, really. And the love of it for many people is this. It's to leave a couple great stories behind, because stories matter, right? Our human stories matter. And art is a reflection of where we're at, as a society a lot of times. And so that's why a lot of us get into it, for just the ability to, like I said, leave a couple good stories behind while we're here.
And it's excellent you bring that up, because I find some of the same things now. I'm definitely not going to compare your acting career to me being a podcaster, but they are both art forms, of different mediums for sure. But it's really great, because since I found this passion, I meet people like yourself. I meet all kinds of amazing people that I would never meet, not having done a podcast, that it just inspires me every day and helps me to want to be a better person. And I think that's the whole premise of my podcast, Just a Dude Podcast, just shows that we can be just dudes, or dudettes, as I call it. And we can just, we can work through things and become the best version of ourselves. Because if we want to reach our dreams, we have to put in the work to do that, because no one else is going to do it for us. And so that's great to have someone like yourself to come on, give, let's hear about your story, where you've come from, from a small town in Virginia back to New York City, where your parents were from, where you got some coaching, some education, met your wife, your now wife. It's absolutely amazing how your journey can go through there. So outside of college and working with coaching actors, was there any other type of training that you took while you were in New York?
Absolutely. But I wanted to give you a
Good.
quick compliment because I really do. I think that, what I found in so many of these interviews that I've done with podcasters such as yourself that have these wonderful platforms that you've built from the ground up is that I think that there is something to a film or a stage show, and you get to see just kind of the slice of what that actor can do in that role, or what that character is when you're seeing the film. But what I love about conversations like this, Nathan, is that we get to kind of dive deep into the backstory of how I've created it. So it's like we're really giving each other a platform through something, like I said, that you've built from scratch.
Yep.
to do that. So I just really wanted to give you a compliment because I think
I
podcasters know they put themselves out there and they're building something themselves. And I think that there's just listen, I'm a big fan of everybody that does it because it takes a lot of work to do what you do. And I think it's very meaningful when you get to share a little bit more about who you are as a person, not just who you are as an artist.
Absolutely. Because I know you've probably done some of the quick media hits, right, on news channels and everything else, right, and just say your 5-second, 10-second piece about the movie, but nobody ever actually gets to hear about Matt Drago, the person, right? Yes, you did a great job in the movie. It's great to see you, but what are you like as a person? And this is, I'm just glad to have you on the show, and I want to make sure that you understand the respect I have for your craft as well, because there is so much that goes on behind the scenes, not even talking about how you prepared to get to your roles, but just once you get there and know you've got it, you got to learn the script. You got to learn, what are the different scenes going to look like? Am I going to have to look at different cameras or not look at cameras? There's so much stuff that goes into your craft that I don't think, people see you on the big screen. They think, oh, great. Matt did a great job, but they don't see all that hard work behind the scenes either that goes into the film.
100%. And to your question, I mean, it's a lot of figuring out your own process as an actor. I really did. I dived deep into a lot of different training methods, and that was because of Terry Schreiber, in this little acting class that I was in. 12 people. I had to be on the wait list for a year. I'd heard from so many people how great he was. I wanted to be a part of that. Again, I was one of those actors that really never really wanted to be broken down. I wanted it to be loved out of me. I really wanted to feel like I was in a safe space. You hear some acting teachers do it, and I've met a few, and it just doesn't jive with me. Mm-hmm. I really like someone that gives me a safe space and an environment to thrive in, and that was Terry. What was so extraordinary about Terry is that he had learned all the different processes of acting. He had studied with Lee Strasberg. He had, obviously done Stanislavski, Meisner. These are different methods. Meisner is very much like reflection of like reading people. Kabuki training is another one, which is like body work. It's Japanese body work and finding the character within your own body. So there's like a lot of different methodologies that I learned when I was with Terry. And what was so unique about him was he gave them all to you freely, but then he kind of let you kind of cherry pick what was going to be your process. Because again, you have to find your unique process in acting like you do in everything in life, right?
Yeah, you have to make it your own. Absolutely.
You have to make it your own. So I really did. Learning with him gave me the ability to almost have like a real core foundation to maybe take a certain process for one character where I might take a completely different process with another character. For my role in Somewhere in Montana, Fabian Verdugo, I took a very method approach because I felt like the character really aligned with me. I found a lot of himself in me, and I found a lot of me in him. And so I found a way to bridge the gap. And I did that by, again, finding him in my body. I hired a nutritionalist and a fitness instructor that helped me lose 25 pounds for this role, because I felt like I really needed to lean out for the role. Like this character, he's very driven. He's somebody that cares more about other people than he does himself. Even if he's passionate for the family that he's created, and the family that he's created are his producers, his cinematographer, his, AD, his, like, everybody that's on set is his responsibility, and he holds the weight of that. So for me, I felt like he was very driven, but he cared more for others than he did himself sometimes. So I felt like leaning him out made more sense. So, in hiring these nutrition coaches. Like I always give so much credit to the team because they told me exactly what to do. Nathan and Jennifer DeTracy, they were wonderful. They basically, because I like to lift weights, I like my protein shakes, but this character for me, like, again, he forgot to eat meals. So it was kitchen and cardio.
Yeah.
I was basically losing a lot of muscle, losing a lot of fat, leaning out for this part. And it really just gave me the vessel for when I came to set. I felt like I had done everything that I needed to prepare, that I felt like I was in the body of the character. So
yeah.
method is it's a very, to some people, because it gets a bad rep for the horror stories that you hear, right?
Right.
But for the most part, it's actually a really great practice because it really does force you to fully let go of yourself into the character and let the character fully fall into you. And so like you become one in a very cool way. And then again, you do all this work. For me, I love really delving into backstories. I love figuring out what the behavioral elements are with a character. When you see me in this film, it's going to be that. You're going to see like I'm a completely different person. And it's because of all the work that you do in building that character. And then the fun part happens, Nathan. You get to set. You're around phenomenal actors and people. These are my friends now, like Graham McTavish, like Michelle Hurd, like Jonathan Stoddard, Kate Orsini, Kaylee Macchio, Tasha Gates, Andrew Roa, just an incredible cast. And you just are with them and you don't even know what's going to happen at that point. Like you just say the words. And that's honestly, as an actor, where the magic happens, is you don't even know what's going to happen. And I think that's really when you start to find the love of the game, because it's no different than a football player, a baseball player. It's like, it's all those reps, it's all those swings with the bat or all those reps in practice. And then you play the game. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know. But that's kind of what makes it great, right? Is the unknown.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really awesome because that's another, you brought up another thing too that we sometimes forget to think about. You see it a lot with probably more action type movies, but we see it in dramas too. We saw it with Brendan Fraser in The Whale, right? Yeah. Where he gained all that weight. And now you losing that weight. I have to assume how long did it take you to lose? What'd you say, 22 pounds?
Yeah, I was 25 pounds. And
25 pounds, yeah.
It's weird because first of all, I felt like I waited too long. It was just kind of a last second thing where I was like, I just really feel like I'd done all the work with Fabian, but then all of a sudden something felt off. And, it was probably one of those moments where I was just kind of reflecting, thinking about it. And then I was like, yeah, this is not him. Like, it's like I was looking at myself. I was like, this is not him. And so I what I do is I ask people that I trust. I've got a really great friend in Nathan Reed, who is an actor. He's a stuntman, and he was working with some great fitness and health instructors. But it was 6 weeks before I was supposed to show up on set. So I had 6 weeks, and I basically decided like I'm going to lose as much as I can. I'm going to lean out as much as I can. And in 6 weeks, it ended up being 25 pounds. But then really the tougher part, well, I should say that that's tough, first of all.
Yeah, that's definitely tough.
I definitely was working out a lot. I was, doing the little small meals and measuring everything and making sure that everything that I was putting in my body was low calorie. That way I was at a caloric deficit and all this. They gave me all these trackers and stuff like this that I could measure my fitness on and all that good stuff. But because I wanted to make sure I was doing it safely, first of all, and that's why I hired them.
And so that I would be one of the questions I ask is, did you make sure you were doing it safely as you went through? But yeah, that sounds about right.
I had done it myself, I feel like I wouldn't have, but because you are a sum of your parts in any profession and in life. For me, I was like, okay, I really want to do this, but I have to do it safely. So I'm going to hire people that know how to do it. And that's where I felt like I had my guardrails. Like they would keep me safe within it, and they would tell me exactly what to do and when to work out and when to eat what, because there's certain things that you can't eat past a certain time at night. Like it was very calculated. And because of them, I was able to do it in a healthy way. And that was obviously very, very key for me, because health obviously matters more than anything in life.
Yeah. And that was one of the things that I was getting to. I know I've heard a lot of actors, and just like yourself, I was hoping you would go there. But one thing, I wanted to point out to the listeners is, yes, you did it safely and under supervision. So don't just go out there and say, I'm going to lose 25 pounds in 6 weeks. But do it safely. Find someone that can help you, that's a professional, that can really make sure that you're doing it the right way, where you're not going to put your health at risk.
Exactly. There's so many masters of craft out there, and like there's somebody for everything. And it's like, if you have people around you that know how to do certain things, like let them guide you, because then you won't do anything destructive to yourself. Like you have to be safe, right? So it was very key for me to do that. But then I also obviously had to be I was there for about 6 weeks after, and then you have to maintain that weight during.
That might even be harder. Exactly.
Because you don't have your own stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. And I'm sure when you're shooting, you're probably left to like craft service. So whatever they have on set is what you're going to eat. And obviously you want to pick the right things, but it makes it even tougher when you probably have donuts and cakes and everything there too.
100%. Homemade huckleberry pies in Montana. Oh my gosh. I did splurge on a huckleberry pie. Absolutely.
And so I think this gives us a good leeway into, somewhere in Montana, because I know when I was doing the research for our show, this was completely shot in Montana, right? Was
all
the
in
whole thing,
Montana. Yep.
Yeah. Which is kind of amazing. And I know we'll probably talk about it a little bit later, but I know you kind of have a dream for yourself to shoot a movie in your hometown, right? Or at least your home state.
Yeah. We could talk about it now. I mean,
yeah. Hey, let's do it. What the heck?
Yeah. So because Fabian, who is an LA, West Coast director, made such an impact on me, and I saw what he wanted to do in this story. And again, such a special thing. Like, Brandon Smith, who's the writer and the director of Somewhere in Montana, really allowed me to build the character with him, like a collaboration between the two of us, because he wrote a lot of himself into this director. And I could see a lot of me and him and me. And I just felt like it was paying honor to his story to really like understand the elements that he was writing into this really beautiful, rich character. And so we'd get on Zooms just like this, and we'd go scene by scene, and we would talk through the different scenes and the different elements. And these are times that I really reflect on very fondly, because it was just, really special. And those beginning stages as an artist are always like really transformative, because you get to be so curious, you know what I mean? Because again, you're searching for answers. You're searching for what the director and the writer wants. And any good actor should want to serve the director and the writer and the producers and the crew, and make sure that everybody, when you're showing up, I always say this, actors should do most, if not all of their work in pre-production, because that's the time when you're really by yourself and you get to really immerse yourself in the character, obviously learn the lines, and then come to set and be really prepared. That way you can just play, right? And that's, so it was really cool really working this character with Brandon, because we'd find little different nuances about him. But as I started to know more about Brandon, I saw why this film was so important to him. And it was important to him because he was writing a love letter to Montana. And it's a place that he's called home for a long time. And he lives in this town, Polson, Montana, where he wanted to use every location that he could. So he used the barber shop, he used the ranch, he used the bar, like he used different elements in his little town to pay homage to this beautiful little town set at the base of Flathead Lake. And I think what was so special about what I saw when we finally got to see the movie and people were getting to see it at the premiere in Polson, Montana, is I remember afterwards, I was just by myself shopping in a couple stores, getting a couple gifts for my wife. And 3 people came up to me and they said almost the exact identical thing, Nathan. They all came to me in some way and said it was so important to see basically our little corner of the world have a story. And for our story to be told. And it really just resonated with me. And it's like I kept learning more and more things about Fabian and about this story and about myself through this process. And that was one moment where I was like, wow, okay. So maybe this is what I can do as an artist for my next chapter, is crafting stories that showcase little corners of the world that feel like they don't have a voice, that feel like, they're voiceless, because I feel like that innately causes a lot of the dissonance that we're feeling as a country, is when people don't feel heard. And sometimes the best way to do it is through art, with actors telling maybe even if it's a slightly larger than life story, to show the elements of what makes that little, town special. You know what I mean? What makes like that little thing. And watching this film back now, it's just a love letter to Montana, specifically Polson. And so my wife, since we're from the same little town in Front Royal, Virginia, our next chapter is to bring back a movie to our little hometown to pay homage to the people that we grew up and loved in our little hometown. So she wrote this beautiful Christmas film. It's in script right now. Hopefully in the next year and a half, we'll get some budgeting for it. But, it's just really special. It's won a couple awards already. And, I see myself as a producer. She's the writer. I'm hoping that she gets into directing too. And obviously me being in it as an actor as well will just really be special, because you realize when you bring films back to these little hometowns, how much it just becomes like a story that's bigger than everybody. And, you get people that again, it's the first time in my life where I'm looking at the credits for Somewhere in Montana, and I know everybody's name. These are my friends, Jason, who gaffed the light, Travis, who did the sound, it's like all these people that are part of my family now. And I think that's something that I want to create with my production company now in my next chapter.
I love that. Coming from a small town or a smaller town myself, I live in a small city called Talmadge, Ohio. We're outside of Akron, which is about 45 minutes south of Cleveland. And we have the same thing. I grew up here. I love this town. It's historical and it's significant. We were a big part of the Underground Railroad and things like that. And I think as well as I do, and I think, this is probably why you're going to that direction, but there's always a special place in our hearts for our hometowns. And I love the fact that you're taking this idea and running with it and saying, you know what, I could make a movie in LA. I can make a movie in New York, wherever, Miami, all these big places that we see movies all the time. But I love the fact that you're going to take it back to a small town and even maybe branch out from there and go to even smaller towns throughout the country, or maybe, who knows, even the world, and we'll just see your company grow. Hopefully. I'm giving you good vibes for that one. But I think it's amazing when we see filmmakers make films in areas that we don't normally see. And I think that adds just another nuance to that good feeling. Like you said, like a love story. A love story.
It's got to mean something. Yeah, it's got to mean something. And I think that what's so meaningful about film is, these just, families that you create in telling these stories. And then there's a part of it too, where it's producers looking for those built-ins, that person that maybe owns that lumber yard that could build a bar for me, because it's everybody's film. That's the thing. That's what's so special about film. And I mean, I do, I love the craft of acting. Actors get a lot of credit, sometimes too much, in my opinion, but that's we're part of the story. But the crews are what make films great. The producers behind the scenes, the directors, I mean, these are people that sometimes sacrifice everything. And especially for indie films, I'm in awe of some of these people, because I know firsthand what sacrifices they make to get these projects funded. And I say this too, it's like dreamers are fighters. Don't sleep on dreamers. Dreamers will fight for their dreams, and sometimes to their own detriment. And so I just feel like I'm at the sweet spot in my life and my career where I just am really enjoying it. But I think in addition to being an actor, which is my first love, of course it is, I really love collaborating. And I really am looking forward to the next chapter where I can produce and kind of get the family together and build something that we're all collectively proud of.
Yeah, I love that. Just the fact of, making it something of your own and going to that next step. You're still keeping the acting, right? It's still going to be there because you've got that as your foundation. But now you get an opportunity to collaborate with others and make something even bigger than just being, just a role on the screen. You can make it your own. And that's amazing. I do want to touch on it just because it's, it is the movie, but Somewhere in Montana, do you want to give us the audience just a little riff about what it is? Not too much. I want them to actually go watch the movie, but you want to give them a little synopsis about the overview of it?
Absolutely. It's a story of the times. It's a big story. It's a conversation starter. Fabian Verdugo is a West Coast director fighting for his dreams. He's basically up in a very difficult position where the investors for the film are about to pull out. He's got, insurance issues with one of the actors. There's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that you can almost glean from in actual film in terms of how hard it is to even make a film. And this one is a legacy piece for him. It's very important. And so for filmmakers, everything has to be perfect. I think of the great Francis Ford Coppola. I mean, he fought for specific locations because that's where the story lived in his mind. And it's something that's very hard to quantify, but when you see it, you know it. The location that Kat, his producer, and again, producers and directors, they're brothers and sisters. I mean, a lot of times, the director's more on the left side where they're thinking of the creative aspect of it. And producers are the right side where they're like, no, we really need to make sure that we go on this or we're not going to be able to do it. So a lot of times there's checks and balances between those two. And I was just so grateful to have Michelle Hurd, who plays Kat, my producer. I mean, she became a real life sister to me offset. And I mean, that relationship really does translate on screen. When you see us act in the scenes that we have together, you'll see we really do have that chemistry together. But she finds this really iconic location, which is a Montana ranch owned by John Alexander, Graham McTavish's role. And his legacy is his ranch. It's been in the family for generations and generations. And he's in a tough spot too, because the bank is calling him and he's basically on life support for this ranch that has, surpassed the test of time and is something that he's built on and wants to, continue on. And so, it starts out where these two people are two uniquely different people and we don't understand each other because maybe Fabian in some ways is okay, well, I'm bringing money to the table and here's the transaction. But I think what Fabian doesn't understand is that, this film will be part of his legacy too. And, I think Brandon writes this story so respectfully and with so much grace because he writes uniquely John and I as the protagonists and antagonists of the same story. Yeah. And isn't that so true in life that we're good people, but we make mistakes, we butt heads, we do things that we wish we could take back, right? And I think this story goes into a lot of those conversations. Graham and I have a 10-page scene that's just the two of us. And we talked about it, a lot about how to make it a respectful conversation with two men, just like we're having right now, two dudes, right? Just having those dudes. Tough conversations, and really getting in there and saying, where can we explore finding that mutual respect that we have for each other? Because if we can really expose what that looks like right now with two uniquely different people with two different energies that agree on completely different things, maybe there's a path forward for us because again, respect is the highest form of love. And so I really do. I feel like it's a great conversation starter. We've had people from all walks of life see the film and they've all thought it was a beautiful film. So I think it's just a really great path forward for our country and our society for films like this to exist.
You just hit on something that I wanted to talk about next, which was how the timing of this film coming out, right? I think it just came out on January 10th. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah. Just came out on January 10th, and I couldn't think of a better time with, just speaking of Americans. Now, I generally, in my news segments or with some of my folks, I will talk about politics a little bit, and I'm only just going to touch the surface, nothing right or left. But I ultimately think, and this is one of the messages that I keep trying to get across, is right now we are so divided in this country that you're either right or you're wrong. There's no in between. And one of the messages that I try to get across, and this is where I think somewhere in Montana is a perfect timing for this message, is that even though we might have completely different views and we might have completely different backgrounds, upbringings, whatever, we're still human beings. And in the end of it, we're always going to find that we have more in common than we don't. And I think that's a great message that we need to get. And the country we need to get the country back together, specifically here, because we're so divided. And I think films like this and opportunities for us to use our voice to say, hey, quit looking at all the negative things and let's look at some positive things and let's get back together as a nation. And so that's why I just wanted to just throw that point out that this film couldn't have come out at a better time than this January, because it's definitely something that the country needs right now.
Amen. And I'll just follow up on that, Nathan, which is a time that I had offset. And I'll share the picture for your listeners, because it's a moment where me as Matt understood the immense power of this film. You know, even the people that owned the ranch, David and Sue, they weren't sure that they wanted a film to be filmed
Mm-hmm.
on their ranch. So a very meta experience. But there was one day, and again, this is an active cattle ranch in Montana. Like, I can't stress that enough. It's a working ranch. It's a real ranch, right?
Yep.
It's a working ranch, right? So people need understand what that means, right? And there was this day where David came down to the cattle pit, and we shot a scene there. And at one point I asked him a simple question. And again, this is a person that's very unlike me in many ways, right? And that's okay, because I saw what he did and I saw how he cared for his family. I mean, him and his wife Sue would have us, Graham and I, up for breakfast in the morning. We'd be eating eggs and hanging out with their grandkids. Like, it really became like this just incredible family dynamic outside of actually shooting the film. And it was just this day that really changed everything for me, not only as an actor, but in my life, where I looked at David and I said, how do you do this? And he knew exactly what I meant.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just this amazing response, because Montana ranchers, they're very succinct. They're not having long conversations like I'm having right now. Like, they're subtle and nuanced. And I think that's what Graham did so well in articulating that as an actor playing John in this film. But it's quick conversations. Hey, yeah, see you 6 p.m. All right, 23 today.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. You know what I mean? It's very succinct, right? And I asked him the question again. How do you do this? And he knew what I was asking him.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the first and only time I ever saw him get emotional, Nathan. He literally looked right up at the sun. It's this beautiful sunny day in Montana. And I see a tear well up in his eye. And he just goes, oh, it's still hard.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And it still gives shivers down my spine, because in that moment, I was like, oh, there is more that can connect us than could ever divide us. We just need to let each other in again. Like,
exactly.
And we don't, and the great thing about it is, when you start to let each other in, you don't have to agree on everything. In fact, you never will. So there's no point anyway, right? So it becomes this thing of just allowing yourself over to the other person. And those are where the good feelings come. And again, I think so much of acting for me, and why it's been a passion in my life, is because what actors are trying to do is we're trying to connect people to their good, positive feelings, right?
Yep.
Because I think when we're in touch with those, we are all collectively better together. So it was that moment on the ranch. I'll have to share that picture, because it was a moment for me, like in that post, where I was like, in short, we need each other. We need each other.
Yep, absolutely. And that's just one of the biggest things. And I didn't mean to go off on that but I just thought it was so great that the timing of the film coming out. And I know, I'm sure there's been delays and things like that, but it couldn't have come out at a better time. And I think, anybody that has the film in their area should go see it. I mean, just watching the clip, the intro clip or the promo clip on like IMDb, check it out if you go there. It's so powerful just to see the back and forth between you guys. It's amazing, because you can feel the passion that's there just by watching a small clip. You can feel the passion, and just I think that everybody's going to be excited to watch this movie. I think it's pretty amazing. So now, Matt, this is your big breakthrough role, I think, as you called it, with this film. But you've done other projects too before, right? We've seen you before.
Absolutely.
What are some of the other things you've done?
I've done a lot of theater growing up. Like I said, I've done pretty much everything from modeling. I was an axe model at one point, to music videos,
nice.
Like Counting Stars.
I've never been a model. So at least you did one thing that one of us could do.
Oh, stop,
I just kid.
It was a very tough day. I got to be honest, Nathan. I mean, I was on set for 12 hours, and women were just running their hands through my hair all day. It was
so tough.
It's what we do for the love of the game, right?
Exactly.
But yeah,
the sacrifices you make.
The sacrifices you make, exactly,
yep.
Right? There's just odds and ends jobs, like commercials. I was in a Super Bowl commercial with Comcast Xfinity. I was in a commercial that ran really for a long time that was actually pretty fun with Kat Dennings from Two Broke Girls. I've done a lot of like odds and ends things like podcasts, short films, independent films. And those are all on my IMDb if you want to check them out. But it's really, acting is so much of the gig to gig to gig, and that's why it's so nice being like, again, on a show like yours, because then you kind of get the backstory of why I'm doing what I'm doing as opposed to just being a face.
I got to think too that it's so hard because I'm just thinking about it for me now, my day job is I work in IT. Specifically, we do with healthcare AI. And I know that I'm going to have a paycheck every so often, right? It's going to be the same amount. It's going to be a paycheck. It's steady. That has to be a little gut wrenching for you sometimes, right? To know, okay, where if I don't have an acting gig right now, where's the next money coming from, right? Because you don't have those normal paychecks that everybody else does from a normal 9-to-5 job, do you?
No, I mean, unless you're getting residuals,
exactly.
And that is one thing with streaming that has been very difficult. It's why SAG-AFTRA went on strike last year, because there's a lot of metadata, with streaming platforms that is hidden and a little bit, less accessible than the Nielsen ratings used to be, which is, people tuning in on Thursday at 7:00 for this show,
Yep.
So it makes it a lot more difficult right now to figure out how to navigate that, because again, you have to understand as an actor is that you put yourself into that character, into that role, and then it gets seen over and over and over and over again. And that's where actors and artists, musicians too, make their money, is on the residual factor of it, because you've done your work, but people are still monetizing it. The business execs are still monetizing
They're still getting their money.
They're still getting their money. So the people that are part of that creatively have to also get their piece of the pie, because it's what, feeds their families, right? It's what pays their bills. So, and LA ain't cheap, right? New York's not cheap.
No, I can't even imagine what it's like to live in LA right now with the prices of everything. I mean, just here in the Midwest, in Ohio, I'm like, oh, goodness, I make decent money, but, going to the grocery store anymore kills you. So
100%. Yeah, and that's how I've kind of found the balance is I'm also, a real estate agent with one of the biggest teams in LA County.
Nice.
And that's kind of what keeps me balanced, so that, even though real estate can be a little bit high and low, acting can be a little bit high and low, it gives me that like kind of foundation. That way I never feel like I'm a broke or a desperate actor, right? Where I can go into an audition and feel like I have confidence. Yeah.
And you actually get a choice in the roles that you pick, and you're not just picking it because you need money.
Correct.
Exactly. And that makes it even better, because if you're doing something you love, and, that's the way I look at this podcast thing, is it's something I love. I enjoy doing it. If I make money from it, great. I haven't yet. But if I do, great. If not, it's all right, because it's a passion project and I have something else to fall back on. But what's even better is when you do, like yourself, get that paid acting gig, because then you're like, hey, I'm getting paid to do what I enjoy. And that's kind of amazing.
And it's true. I mean, when I say this, I mean it wholeheartedly. Like for me, I would rather leave 100 good stories behind on this time in life than have $100 million, hand to God.
Yeah, exactly.
And I know that sounds crazy to some people listening, but like for me, like that is the value that I have in life, is that, I had this bug as a child in the foothills of Virginia. And for me, it was always about the stories that we could leave behind. I think those are so valuable. And that's why I just, I love telling them whenever and wherever I can.
Yeah, that is so awesome, Matt. I just love that, because I think if you, the old saying, if you do what you love, you never work a day in your life. And, that's how I feel. There's a lot, as well as I do, there's a lot of work that goes into a production, even just a small podcast production like this. I'll spend hours editing and all that stuff. Yeah. And, it's a whole love for the thing. I never see it as work, because I enjoy doing it. Maybe not the editing as much, but I do enjoy having guests like yourself on. And it does make all the difference. If you're doing something that you love, you never work a day in your life. And, for you, knowing at a young age, it's so rare for people to know at a young age, hey, I want to do X or Y. Yeah. And you knew, and you went through it, and it stayed. And that's kind of amazing, because a lot of people, I'm going to be an astronaut, I want to be a fireman, I want to do this, and they never end up being what they want to be. And you had the opportunity to not only follow a dream, but keep a dream and then achieve it as well. And
Yeah, you have to be able to work for it, right? It's like you said, like I understand how much work you put into the podcast because
yeah, and it's, trust me, it's nothing like a film.
right, and because my wife edits them, you know, and
Yeah.
and it is very cumbersome, and you know, you do put a lot of work into it. But I think what's so valuable about it is it becomes part of your legacy. And I
Yes.
think that's another thing about Somewhere in Montana that's such a big, brave message is that, like, if you can really start to understand and appreciate someone else's legacy that's not your own, that is an instant bond. It's an
Yep.
instant connection. And that is something that I'm so grateful for, because that scene that Graham and I have, like, we're starting to appreciate each other's legacy. And again, some people might think, well, you know, film is like this big forward facing thing. No, it's just a legacy. It's just something that is important to you, you know, where, like, you know, in there's this line that I have in the scene where, like, you have a real legacy and I'm pointing to his ranch, like, because I can see it, like, it
Yep.
exists, and it's something
physically there. Yep.
it's physically there. And so it's just that dynamic of, like, really just leaning into honoring, appreciating each other's legacy. And again, once you can do that, like, you will have a bond with anybody that you talk to,
I love it.
including right now that I'm having with you right now, Nathan.
Yeah,
So
I
yeah.
love that, Matt. That's such a great thing to think about, people's legacies and their stories, and not just where they are today, but where they've come from. It can help you understand each other so much more and put you on, I don't want to say a level playing ground, but on an emotionally and, you know, spiritually and mental, you know, same playing ground as far as understanding each other and knowing, you know, that, hey, we might have differences, but I'm always a firm believer we always have more in common than we do, you know, in our differences. So yeah, that's great
You're gonna
to
like
hear
this
that.
picture that I'm gonna share
Yeah,
with you then, because
I love
it's a
it.
simple picture. I mean, it literally is. It's the four of us. It's Graham and David, you know, the two basically Montana
Hmm.
ranchers, the one that's, you know, the real Montana rancher, the one that's the actor
Yep,
portraying the Montana rancher, and Brandon, the writer and director, and me. And,
that's
you know,
awesome.
he's the real director of Somewhere in Montana. I'm portraying the director in Somewhere in Montana. And it was just this moment of, like, just, it was overwhelming, because even when I shot that scene with Graham, like, it was just like, oh, this is the alignment that we need to have, you know, whether it's
Hmm.
political or social or, you know, religion or whatever. It's that you just have to find ways to appreciate, really, honestly, each other's differences.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what we have. There's this beautiful ceremony scene with in the film that comes right before this 10-page conversation. And it's a ceremony of really how to, in Native American cultures, like, give away somebody that you've mourned the loss of for a year. And then you give away different things that they had in their life to different people so that they can live on through other people. And I just remember being on set for that scene and being right next to my big sister, Michelle Hurd, and with Kaylee Macchio. And we, you know, we're all in this. And Andrew Roa, my friend, who's become my golf buddy too. I just love this guy. Like, he started to do his, you know, a tribal chant from, you know, cause he's Native American.
Yeah.
And we were just all in tears. We were so moved. And it's like, if you can give yourself over, if you can, like, give yourself over to a moment like that with another person, right, you know,
Hmm.
and find that emotional connection with them, like, you can be in a room with people that maybe don't agree on some of the things, and it doesn't matter anymore.
Yep,
Like,
exactly.
it just goes away. And then, you know, how Brandon just kind of writes that scene out for the two of us to have this man-to-man talk. I mean, honestly, Nathan, I can't wait for you to see it now, because I think
Yeah.
you're going to get even more out of it just based on our conversation today.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. I'm so looking forward to it. Well, let's transition a little bit. I know we talked about it, but I definitely want to discuss Dragon Hunter Productions. Number one, I love the name. I have a theory as to how you came up with the name, but I'll let you talk a little bit about Dragon Hunter Productions.
Okay, sounds good. Well, it might be the right theory, because my wife's maiden name is actually Hunter. And
Yay!
obviously, my last name is Drago. So it kind of worked out. Drago
I
and
love it.
Hunter
Yep.
Productions made Dragon Hunter Productions.
That's
And
exactly what my theory was, and I
there you
thought that
go.
was
Okay.
great that you guys used your last names to just mash it together. And Dragon Hunters sounds so awesome anyway. That's
Pretty
just
cool,
amazing.
right? It
Yeah.
just kind of worked out. But again, you know, we've got a website. It really is our passion now to really just explore these, like, small, intimate conversations and people from different parts of the country that, like, need their voices heard, that need a platform, and we want to give it to them. So, and honestly, Nathan, there's no better person to collaborate with than somebody that you love. I mean, like, it's just been so awesome to see her writing. She got into writing in 2020. Now she's got 6 scripts. She's one of the Project Involved, which is Film Independence Project Involved Fellows of this year. She's going to have her first short film out. She actually got to go to the Independent Spirit Awards this past weekend on the beach in Santa Monica. And again, it's about the work. I think I think because we've seen each other like go through so many trials and tribulations in our careers, we're just like now in a constant state of just rooting for each other. And
that's awesome.
Just think, and now like the alignment, because she was acting in New York City more so. She went to NYU, she went to the Tisch department. I think now that she's writing, we feel like this full alignment where, I'm the actor producer, she's the writer, and I kind of want to get in her director. I feel like it's like this perfect thing of like, now we're starting to build our team, and we're starting to bring in people that we love and make them part of our family, and then go out and get it, tell some great stories and leave them behind while we're here.
Yeah, and I know you shared with us what inspired you to start this company, and I think did it actually come from you working on Somewhere in Montana? Is that what inspired you? Or did you have that bug before that movie? Or was that where you're like, man, this is great, I love it?
I think it was something that we were thinking about doing. Laura had a podcast that she actually won Best Podcast Script for.
Oh,
It's
nice.
a cool little trophy I've got over there. It's the Bronze Typewriter at Austin Film Festival. And it's actually one of the bigger writing film festivals in the country, at Austin Film Festival. It's very writer-centric. Some film festivals are known for different things for your listeners, but Austin is really known for their writers. And so, again, we're students of the game. She went a few years ago, and she was talking to somebody because she had submitted a script for it, and one of the people that she met said, Laura, writing is writing. Like, it doesn't matter if you're writing a feature, a short, a podcast. Maybe you should write a podcast. So she did, but she is like, just incredible. And so what she did was she fully produced the podcast, so that when she won, which was incredible, she was able to drop the podcast the next day for everybody that was at the event. And it was
awesome.
so gratifying. Like, we got to hire actors, and, she got to go to sound booths. She has an original song for the show.
That's awesome.
And it's a great medium, because again, we go back to podcasts, right? With scripted podcasts, it's a way to showcase your skill as a writer to, executives. And again, they can pop them on while they're doing the dishes or taking the dog for a walk, and it gives them the world that you're trying to create, not just the words on the page, right?
Exactly. And I almost think of that too, because when you have a scripted podcast, and sometimes it could be scripted with, multiple hosts or whatever, and sometimes it's just, we've seen a lot of true crimes and stuff like that. But what I love about scripted podcasts too is it's like the new audiobook.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's
radio's back.
It is.
Yeah.
It's you write a book and then you get the audiobook. Well, podcast is kind of like the new audio version, or the talk radio that we used to listen to on FM and AM radio before they started getting rid of it all. But yeah, it is pretty awesome. And to think, and that's a great point for people that are listening that maybe want to start their own podcast, is that scripting is a possibility as well, to script it. I use script on my Friday news shows, mostly because I can't remember anything, but it is, because scripting podcasts is a good way to get in, and, you can have guests and stuff like I have you, Matt, but just, throwing that out there. But yeah, that's amazing that she's gotten into writing. You've got the acting, producing, going to try to nudge her into some directing. And I think that might come naturally too, Matt, because if she's writing the story, she has a vision in her head about what it should look like.
I think that's something that was so special. And just, again, you asked the question, it's so insightful. It's like, did a lot of this come from Somewhere in Montana? The truth of it is it totally did, because it fired me up. And it was being around producers like Joe Borden, who was the guy that, fought for funding and was just so, articulate, and like, having these conversations, and, really just making people believe in the story that we were trying to tell. And then Eden Matson, I gleaned so much from her. She is the ultimate workhorse. I mean, she balanced so many things at the same time. I don't know how she did it, but she did. And again, there's a lot of just love for the game that comes in these indie films that, again, I tell all the listeners, like, support indies, because these are people that like are really sacrificing everything to give you a great story. You know what I mean? And they don't have the budgets, they don't have the marketing dollars.
There's not a huge Hollywood studio behind them, and
Right.
you're not shooting on all these sound stages that are specifically made for you. You're going and shooting on location. You're using your own money, using your own, equipment that you might have to purchase on your own. And I agree with
100%.
you. I think small film, indie film, like you said, is a great way. And generally, I mean, I don't want to talk down the bigger guys, but generally they have a better story.
They have to.
It's a story we can more relate to.
100%. When they don't have the big marketing dollars, I mean, you have to get the word out however you can. That's why I thank you for your platform today, because it really is. It's about expressing the story behind the story a lot of times. And I think that's why I love getting on podcasts, is because then you get to know just a little bit more. So that way, if you have watched it, you'll glean a little bit more from it. But if you haven't watched it, you'll glean a little bit more for it, because you'll understand the full painted picture. And I mean, like, again, this story and what it did for me as a creator and a collaborator was extraordinary, because I saw people around me sacrificing. I saw the crew members like just sacrificing. I mean, like, and it was my last day on set, and it was a really magical day. I think I had like 6 or 7 scenes I shot the last day that I was on set. And, Brandon was, just standing with me on the ranch, and we were looking at, people that were just working so hard in our crew. And, he said, you get your team. Like, that's really what it comes down to. I can't pack the truck the way that Troy is packing the truck right now. I can't gaff that the way that Jason gaffs it. I can't get the sound when there's like a monsoon coming in the way that you
exactly
create people like that align with you, and you adopt them into your family. And then it's just the most magical thing, because then you just really like it becomes everybody's story. And when I rapped that night, it was so hard to rap. So, somewhere in Montana, because again, Fabian is the first character I've ever truly fallen in love with. Like, I love Fabian, and it was so hard to know that I had shot my last scene, and that like that part of it was concluded for me. But I remember when I rapped, just, going around and just thanking everybody, because all of the energy that they gave me off screen is something that all I had to do as an actor is just put it right back into the project. So it just became this extraordinary thing. And for me, it definitely ignites that flame where you just want to do it over and over and over and over again while you can in this life.
Yeah, and then going with your own production company, and then you said you have is it a Christmas themed movie that you guys have been working on?
Yeah, so it actually, Front Royal on the map used to be named Helltown. Fun fact.
Okay.
And Front Royal, Virginia used to be called Helltown because it was a kind of a bridgeway, ironically, between the North and the South. And it's where a lot of people would kind of come together to get into some good trouble, right? And so it's got like a really, I always say this, like it's got like a good, like almost like a playful demonic vibe to it. You know what I mean? Where it's like it's like the good bad. You know what I mean? Like the good bad exists there, and I think it's rubbed off from all of these like historical things that have transpired there. And so there's always something very interesting that happens every time I go back to Front Royal and I'm visiting my dad, who owns the karate club across from the Main Street Cinema. I went for my 4th degree black belt on May the 4th last year, on Star Wars Day.
May the 4th.
And it was actually May the 4th. Yep. It was with me. It was with me.
Nice.
And actually my dad's birthday is the day before, on May 3rd.
Oh my
gosh,
I got
to
that's awesome.
Be with him on his birthday and do the class and then go for promotion. But that night I could not sleep. I was so wired that, the person that I went for promotion with, my friend Ian McLean, we closed the only bar that really stays late, the Naughty Pine, which is probably where a lot of these stories in Helltown used to take place in this kind of area. And I was telling him a story about, a friend of mine growing up named Richie Lockhart that loved my dad so much as a martial artist and everything that he poured into his practice, that he named his son Drago, like his first name, Drago. And my friend Rachel Bon Jovi and Ian were there, and they like kind of didn't believe me. They were like, "Are you serious?" And I'm like, "No, I'm dead serious. His name's Richie Lockhart." Blah blah blah. Well, the bartender overheard me, and he was like, "Wait, are you talking about Richie Lockhart?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "He's right here," and he was like, he was like literally in the bar, and like it was the
Wow.
coolest thing. Like he
That's
came
awesome.
up, and like, and he hasn't seen me since I was a kid, so he sees me as a full man.
Yeah,
He just
right.
had like a look where he was like, you know this guy, and he looked at me, and it was just this cool moment where like Richie's staring at me, and he's like, Matt Drago, you know, and he was like,
Yeah.
all of a sudden like knew me, and like we gave each other a big hug, and then he told my friends like, yeah, I named my friend my son Drago, and like it was just this like really
That's
cool
so
thing
cool.
so it's those little energy things. It's like a little pocket, a little vortex, if you will, in Front Royal that we really want to explore. And so my wife wrote this extraordinary Christmas movie, and it's not like, you know, it's not a traditional like Christmas movie. There's some darkness to it, you know. There's some depth to it. And the first time I read the script, I was like, this one we have to make. Like this has to be ours, you know, because as a writer, sometimes you sell some of your work. Sometimes,
right.
you got to get your paycheck. You got it, but like, and sometimes you can get staffed on a show. But for this one, like we looked at
You're
each
like,
other.
no,
And
I got to keep this one. Yep.
This one's ours. This one's ours for sure.
I love that.
So,
You know, that's
yeah.
good though, that, you know, she wrote the script and you read it and you're like, oh no, this is too important. Not to say anybody else would mess it up, but too important not to have our own vision on it.
Exactly.
Yeah. I love that. And you guys have already won awards for that script, right?
Yeah, so it's won 2 awards at the Northern Virginia Film Festival, and we're just really, you know, again, just getting that next step, which is going to be funding. And the one cool thing that you learn as a producer too is not only do you necessarily get funding in the terms of credit matching from maybe bigger companies, or you get tax deductions, because a lot of smaller businesses can actually give off tax deductions that they actually would have to pay anyway.
Nice.
And then they can become producers on a film, which is kind of a lot cooler than just giving your money to the government, right?
Right.
I mean, I think so.
Yeah, I think so too.
I think so
They
too,
get enough.
right?
They get enough as
so
it is.
It's a win-win situation. So we're learning different things about that, which is really fascinating. But then the third part, I think, is really, you know, because we kind of touched on it earlier, is what it's called built-ins. And the built-ins are the people that, like, you know, growing up, that like maybe can, you know, donate a location to you, or donate a meal to you, you know, or, you know, or, you know, maybe some equipment that you need, or, you know, so people at Betty's Diner, where Graham and I would get breakfast, you know, they were talking about the film and how much it meant to them. And like, oh, did you hear that this person's helping out and that they got da-da-da-da? And it really became everybody's film. And that's like the atmosphere and the environment that I want to create when we shoot that film there.
That's awesome. I love that, because you're not only are you, you know, obviously funding is important, but, you know, you're not just talking about monetary funding. You know, people can also help by donating their services, their skills, their, you know, whatever, you know, like you said, a location. That's because, and that's really thinking outside the box, you know, because I think if you're probably go to a bigger studio, they're probably thinking, okay, who can we pay to use a location? Where can we rent? Where can we do this? How, you know, do we have a department that can build these props? Where with you not having that big budget, you might say, hey, you know what? I know so-and-so down here. He's an excellent carpenter and I need some things built for the thing. So maybe he can, you know, we can work out a deal there or whatever. So it's really cool to see that you're thinking outside the box of the traditional means to get the funding for the movie, and not just strictly looking at, we got to have all the money. You know, it could be materials, it could be services that could be donated. And that helps make the movie part of everybody, instead of just, you know, okay, yeah, I gave some money to a movie.
100%. It becomes the opposite of transactional when there's heart behind it. You know, when people see what you're doing, they believe in what you're doing. Again, I could go back to Front Royal, and it's such a beautiful thing. I will always be Arthur Drago's son. You know what I mean? So it's just a really, really great feeling to know that like I can go back and really, again, reconnect with some of these relationships that I've had my entire life and say, hey, we want to do something special here. Would you like to be a part of it? You know, and that's a great invitation. I mean, if you are owning that local shop, if you have that bar, like, you know, if you can donate in whatever way, like, guess what? This is going to be your movie too. And I really mean that. Like, and people see it, like when you have these relationships, and that's what's special about it. I never realized how powerful those end credits are in a film until I watched the end credits of Somewhere in Montana, because we were clapping for everybody in everybody that came up, because it's just this extraordinary thing. It's like, we couldn't have gotten that perfect lighting for that location unless, you know, we shot a scene that was the big 10-page scene. during the day because we didn't have any night scenes. And so they clouded it out, and, we found a great location for it. And the lighting that Jason did in that made it look like we were like literally staring at the moon. Like, it was extraordinary. So
That's awesome.
again, you just find these people in your life that align with the dream, and then you share the dream together. And there's nothing better than that.
Yep. I love that, Matt. It's great. I thank you for sharing that, because I don't think a lot of listeners, and I don't mean to call out listeners, but people like myself, and I'm talking about myself here, think about what really goes into a movie. I mean, I think we have an idea, but you're showing that just the passion alone that goes into making a movie is absolutely incredible. And the way that you're, trying to get the movies made, and I don't want to call it a non-traditional way, because maybe it is more traditional, right, with indie films. But
Indies,
you're not doing it you're not big box deal. You're not going to a huge Warner Brothers isn't throwing money at you and saying, "Here, Matt, whatever you need. If you want to, here's $1 billion, go make a movie." So you're making it count too. So whatever you do get, you're gonna make sure that it goes the longest. Just it shows that you're just a dude making a movie, right? And
Amen.
if and I don't want to say if you can do it, anybody can do it, because that's obviously not the truth. But if someone like yourself, who has the ambition, is willing to put in the work and willing to put in the hours, then yes, you definitely can do it.
100%. And I do believe that people can be successful in their dreams. They just have to understand that dreams are work,
Dreams are work.
and there will be sacrifices. And, I'm very personally grateful that, I didn't come from money. I know that's a weird thing to say, but it's like,
I
I
know
know
me
that,
both.
yeah,
We know what it's like to be on the bottom.
We know what it's like, and it makes you hungrier, and it makes you fight harder, and, and it makes you more grateful when you do achieve things,
It does.
and again, I think it makes you a little bit more of a beacon of light to attract people that align with you. And when you find people that align with you, that is when, if you're an aspiring filmmaker or an actor out there listening to this podcast today, like, it is possible. You just have to really enjoy it and find the joy in it every day, because I do say this, but it's the joy is the joy in it is the destination. The journey
Yep.
is the destination. And if you can really enjoy the journey of it, you'll be in the sweet spot. You will attract people, and dreams really can come true if you're willing to put the work into them.
Matt, that's a perfect message, I think, for the audience, is just to show that you really can. It might take time. You're going to have ups and downs. Nothing's ever going to be perfect. And really, I think it's the challenges that make the rewards even better. But
Amen.
There are going to be challenges. There's going to be ups and downs. But if we put the work in and keep trying to better ourselves as, individuals in our craft, we can achieve those goals. And that's such a great point that you brought up there. And I just wanted to thank you for that, because I think that's great for our listeners. So Matt, what's next for you? I mean, obviously we've got the Dragon Hunter Studios going. We got the new movie that you're working on, but any other projects or roles that are coming up for you?
Well, Brandon did tell me actually right before the screening that we had over here in Newhall, California, that he's got another role that he's writing for me. And it was funny because the way that he said it kind of cracked me up, because again, now we're part of the same family, and that's the greatest part about when you start to align with people and you start to really create real relationships with people. He jokingly said right before we were about to screen somewhere in Montana, he said, "You want the good news or the bad news?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Okay, well, the bad news is that you're going to be playing the bad guy." And I looked right at him and I was like, "Brandon, I love playing the bad guy. That sounds
Nice.
awesome." So he's writing a role for me. So that'll be a future project that I'm a part of. And again,
Nice.
so much of that is just like, I'm going to be grateful to probably be around a lot of the people that I was in for somewhere in Montana, and just to be, it really does. It feels like a family reunion at this point. Every time we got together in Palm Springs. We hung out until like the wee hours of the morning. We hung out here for my little screening over here in Newhall, California. There's so much joy in just like being around these people. Like, I always say this, like, I already feel like I've won in somewhere in Montana just because of the family that we created. And so there's that part of my creative process, which is like the relationships that I've built. There's the part of my creative journey that's with my wife, with our own films. And then there's the part of my creative journey, which is your team, which is like my agent. Like I just signed with HRI Talent with Tanya Kleckner. I've got Richard John Martin at Ignite Talent Management. Richard John Martin, he's really like handled a lot of, kind of balancing things out for me. And then I hired my first PR company, Mia Hansen at Portrait PR, who's incredible and has really given me a lot of nuggets that I can use even in interviews like we're having today, just understanding that craft of it, right?
That's awesome.
And so these are the people that, for me, are the third kind of path that I have that kind of keep me in my lane because they want me to be creative. They want me to get these auditions and fully be able to immerse myself in a character and deliver a great tape and not have to worry about the business side of it. So like anything in life, it really just comes back to the fact that you need to create your team. And sometimes that, just happens organically and you just kind of have to be open to that. But when you can find people that truly align with you and what you want to do and what you say, it gets a lot easier.
And that's great advice because, a team, surrounding yourself with a good team to help you move forward and even help you handle things that, you want to focus on acting. If you're going for a role to be an actor, right, you want to focus on the role and not have to worry about all those extra business things on the side if you can, right? Obviously, if you're just starting off, you might have to do that. I'm sure you did yourself, right, Matt? You had to handle
100%.
all these things yourself. And now that, you've gotten this role and a few other roles, now you can afford and help hone your team. And you found people too through the different roles that you've had, which is great.
Yeah, it really does. It's so gratifying when you can have people that you are fighting for you behind the scenes. And again, I really do. I say this, but I am in the sweet spot where I just really feel like I'm appreciative of everybody's work because I know how hard it is to pitch a client that maybe hasn't been into an office. Like it's all relationships. And, I value that because I want to make sure that if they're getting me in that room, I am doing what I know I'm capable of as an actor to make us look good as a team. And it is a team sport and everything in life. So the more that you can lean in on that and kind of relinquish, like, giving yourself all the power and the control because you don't have that, you really start to enjoy the auditions more too, because the auditions are the win. Like when I get an audition, I'm like, and Michelle Hurd says it great. She gets like so excited and fiery, and like that is the win because you get to bring yourself uniquely as an actor to that character, and you love acting, right? So you got a chance to act today, and then maybe it's the harder part for some, but you have to let it go. But the reality is, if you make a good impression over and over again, and you do the work and you're creative and you love what you do and you find joy in and out of acting, right? Or in and out of being creative, right? Like we all have different hobbies, like enjoy those too. Like don't be narrowed into just feeling like you have to get this, like you're at a disadvantage then. Like enjoy.
Yeah, you really need a balance.
You need to find balance, and for me, like I love football. Sundays are, like football's my religion. I'm a big Chiefs Rams fan. I'm a martial artist. So like I'll get outside, I'll do katas, but you have to find ways to just balance it out and to keep having, wonderful, enriching conversations like we're doing today.
Yeah. Excellent. And so, Matt, other than becoming a household name, where do you see yourself in the next decade? Where do you see your career going? Do you think you're going to stick mostly with the acting? Do you think you're going to go more towards a producer, director? Or do you think you're going to maybe find a good combination of that?
That would be the hope, would be the combination, because I do think that producing for me would be a great balance within my own life, to be creative, but also respect the collaborative part of it. Acting, I will never kick because it's, again, going back to the beginning, it's the first love that I've ever had in life. So, I have fought for it up until this point in my life. I will keep fighting for it. But if I'm being perfectly honest, it's never been about being a household name for me. I really mean that. For me, it's about leaving a couple good stories behind. If, success comes out of that, that's great. But
Sure.
I really love serving the material. I love serving the story. I think like, actors are true servants to the material, and they really want to make sure that they're doing a good job because it's the writer's words, it's the director's vision, it's the producer sacrificing sometimes like almost everything in an indie to maybe take out a bank loan to be able to pay for something. It's a lot of sacrifice. Like, making movies are hard. The dream is work, but I think for me, I just, I hope that I just can do it consistently. Is always been the dream for me, is just waking up every day saying I get to do what I love today, even if there are challenges within that. It's to leave like these stories behind that matter to me. And
I love that.
That's the dream that I've had
You're
since I've been a little
truly
kid.
an actor in the fact that you're doing it for the craft and for the right reasons, and not just because you want to be famous. Now, I jokingly say, become a household name, because obviously I would love for that to happen for you on your own terms, though. I would love that to happen on your own terms. So through the roles that you want, the ones that, make us remember, the ones that leave a legacy, I really do I hope that for you. And I know that from the work that you've done and from what I've seen from you, you're not going to let anything stop you from reaching those goals.
Well, thank you, Nathan, for that. I mean, that was really sweet. It's true. It's a very complicated journey, but a very, nourishing one. And
Yes.
I'm just so grateful to be able to share it on your platform today, because I really did. I felt like I was just a dude talking to my friend, another dude, right?
And I loved it too. You never, everybody thinks, oh, it's going to be an actor. Maybe they're not going to be nice or stuck up.
Yeah.
And, I knew when we hooked up, I was like, oh, I think this is going to be a great interview. Just a couple of dudes talking about making it.
Exactly. I like blowing up a lot of the things that people think, because it's a good thing to do. Like, we literally are human beings just like everybody else. And
yep.
And we're just like, our love and passion is storytelling. Like, that's really the only difference, right? And we all have stories to tell. But thank you again for having me on your show.
Yeah.
For me, if you want to connect with me, for your listeners, the easiest place is on my Instagram at Matt Drago, MattDrago. From there, I made it easy. I've got my link tree there. It's got my website for my acting, mattdrago.com. It's also got my production company, dragonhunterproductions.com. and my IMDb if you want to look at my past and future projects. Give me a follow there. Be in the know for my creative journey, but also my life journey, because honestly, to me, they're one and the same.
Yeah.
I like to keep them together, and you won't really find me active on any other social media platforms. So I could kind of just do the one.
Hey, I tell you what, if you've ever done the business of trying to get things out on social media, multiple platforms is a nightmare. It just is.
I just figured, you know what, I'm going to stick to the one and put everything up there. But yeah, that's the best way to connect with me.
Yeah. Smart. I love it, Matt. I should have done that. Now I'm like on TikTok and Facebook, and I'm trying to figure out, okay, what works where. And it's smart.
100%.
Just use one platform.
And then you're like, where did my day go? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, oh, wait, did I post to that one? Crap. But yeah, no, that's perfect. But yeah, Matt's website. And so everybody knows, if you go to justadudepodcast.com, Matt's going to have a guest section there. So all his information will be linked there, including his photo, his websites, and everything that we added. So that'll be on our website. And that's another way for you to get a hold of Matt or see what he's going to be up to.
For your listeners, like, whatever dream you have, like, don't ever give up. Like, it's not worth it to give up on something that you feel passionate about. If you give up on it, you're going to lose part of yourself. I mean, like, honestly, find things in your life that you continue to love, that you continue to stay fired up about. If there's one thing that I want people to take away from this episode, because we are literally just two dudes. We're both creative. You're a creative podcaster. I'm trying to find my different ways in being creative as an actor, as a producer, and telling stories. But everybody has a story. Everybody has a voice. Let's be better together. Let's be in touch with our feelings, our emotions. Let's all be better together by, just leaving our stories behind and really connecting to our own humanity.
Wow. Thanks, Matt. I appreciate that. That's a great way to end it. Well, there you have it, folks. The incredible journey of Matt Drago from Virginia to Hollywood and beyond. Big thanks to Matt for sharing his insights into acting, directing, and the art of storytelling. Don't forget to check out Somewhere in Montana if you haven't already. It's still lighting up theaters. Keep an eye on Dragon Hunter Productions for what's next in Matt's adventurous career. Remember, if you've enjoyed this episode, hit that subscribe button, leave us a review, and share this podcast with your friends. You can follow Matt on his website, mattdrago.com, for all the latest updates on his projects. Stay tuned for more down-to-earth stories from fascinating people right here on Just a Dude Podcast. Until next time, keep being awesome, keep being you, and remember, you too can make it from just a dude to a legend. Until next time, I'm Nathan, signing off.